Hey, friends. If you've been looking for a Christian podcast about healing, faith, and real life happening at the same time, you're in the right place. This one's going to feel a little bit different. Not really a teaching, not exactly a devotional either, just a quieter kind of space to sit for a minute before we keep moving forward. Because if I'm honest, I don't think this part of the journey wraps up neatly. I don't think it ends with clarity or a sense of resolution. I think it ends with a kind of awareness that we're still in it, not in the same way that you were before. And that can be hard to put language to. There's something I've been noticing lately, and it hasn't come in one big obvious realization. It's been showing up in smaller ways, ordinary moments, in the middle of days that still require much of your attention, your energy, and your presence. While at the same time, there are parts of you that are still carrying something, still processing, still healing, still trying to understand what changed. And for a long time, I believed those things were supposed to happen separately. Like healing would happen in its own space, and then life would resume once it was finished. But that hasn't really been my experience. Healing didn't wait for life to slow down. It showed up right in the middle of it. And the conversations that you still had to have, the responsibilities that didn't pause, and the days that looked normal on the outside but felt heavier than they used to. And somewhere along the way, I started to realize maybe nothing is wrong. Maybe I'm just still in it. I think that's what part of this journey has been about. Not arriving, not resolving, not fully understanding everything that's been lost, shifted, or changed, but learning how to live in the space where more than one thing is true at the same time, where you can still feel grief and also begin to notice small moments of steadiness, where you can feel tired and still keep showing up, where you don't have all the answers, and yet something in you is still a little less frantic about needing them. That doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it just feels confusing. Sometimes it feels like you should be further along by now, like you should have a clearer language, like you should feel more resolved. But what if this place, it isn't a place that you're supposed to rush through? What if this is actually where something deeper is happening? Because I think that we've been taught, sometimes without even realizing it, to measure healing by how quickly things start to feel better, how quickly we can explain what happened, how quickly we can move on, how quickly we can say, that was hard, but here's what it taught me. And there's nothing wrong with meaning, there's nothing wrong with growth, but not every season offers that on demand. Some seasons are quieter than that. Some seasons don't hand you a clear takeaway. They just change you slowly while you're still living your life. And I think that's where grief and hope start to sit in the same room. Not as opposites, not as competing with each other, but both present. Grief reminding you that something mattered, and hope quietly reminding you that something is still possible. And most days, they don't take turns. They show up together. You can feel the weight of what was lost and still find yourself laughing at something small. You can still feel the ache of what didn't turn out the way you thought it would, and still sense that God hasn't stepped away from you. You can feel tired and still take one more step forward. None of that is fake. None of that means that you're confused or inconsistent or doing it wrong. It just means that you're human. And maybe it means that you're healing in a way that's more honest than you've allowed yourself to be. I think that one of the quiet shifts that happens here is you stop needing everything to make sense before you allow yourself to keep going. Not because the questions don't matter, but because you begin to realize that waiting for complete clarity might keep you stuck longer than you need to be. So instead, you carry both, the questions and the willingness to keep moving, the uncertainty and the small yes that says, I'm still here. And those small yeses don't always feel powerful. They don't always feel brave. Sometimes they just feel necessary because they matter more than we give them credit for. Because those are the places where your life is quietly being rebuilt, not in big dramatic moments, but in the everyday decisions that stay present, to stay open, to not shut down completely when it would be so much easier to do so. So maybe this is just a moment to release some pressure, the pressure to have a clean ending to this part of the story. The pressure to be further along, the pressure to understand everything before you move forward. Maybe nothing is wrong. Maybe you're just still in it. And I think sometimes what makes this harder is that still in it can feel a lot like failure if you're not careful. It can feel like you should have figured it out by now, or moved past it, or found a way to carry it better. But being still in it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It might actually mean you stayed present long enough for something real to shift. It might mean that you didn't rush yourself out of a process that needed more time than you expected. And maybe that doesn't feel like progress yet, but that doesn't mean that it isn't. And maybe that doesn't mean you're stuck. Maybe it means something in you is still being formed. As we keep going from here, I think that something begins to shift a little bit more quietly, not in a way that demands your attention right away, but in a way that you start to notice if you're paying attention. Because somewhere underneath all of this, underneath the healing, the carrying, the showing up, something in you has been changing. Not just in how you handle things, but in how you see yourself, how you hear your own voice, and even how much space you're starting to allow yourself to take up. And we'll move into that more in the next part of the journey. But for now, I don't want to rush you here. I just want to let this be what it is, a space where grief and hope are both allowed to exist. A space where you don't have to resolve everything. A space where you can acknowledge that you've been carrying more than most people can see, and you're still here. And that matters. And maybe for today, that's enough. If this met you where you are today, I'm really glad that you're here. Make sure you're following the Healer and Hope Giver Practicing Out Loud in your podcast app so you don't miss what's coming next. And if YouTube is your space, the show is there too. And if you need something to gently walk with you between episodes, you can grab my free 7-day devotional, Quiet Authority, through the link in the show notes. If this episode gave language to something that you've been feeling but haven't been able to explain, would you share it with someone? That simple step helps this message reach people who might need it too. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for letting me practice this out loud with you. And as you keep moving forward, remember this: you don't have to choose between grief and hope. Sometimes healing looks like learning how to hold both at the same time.